What if I told you that the real test of your strength isn't how loud you speak, but how calm you stay when everyone else loses control? Every day, you deal with people who interrupt, insult, push your limits, and expect you to react. Maybe it's your boss, your in-laws, your neighbor, or even someone in your own home. And the worst part? You feel like you lose a piece of yourself each time you explode. You regret the words. You replay the moment. You wonder why staying calm seems impossible. But here's the truth. You're not weak for feeling that way. You're human. And Stoicism understood that 2,000 years ago. The Stoics didn't teach you to suppress emotions. They taught you to master them. Not by avoiding hard people, but by becoming unshakable in front of them. Today you'll learn exactly how. This is more than anger control. It's about reclaiming your emotional independence. It's about building a calm mindset that no toxic person can break. You'll learn daily habits, powerful mental reframes, and timeless wisdom that helps you outlast, outthink, and outgrow every unbearable situation. And no, you're not alone. Many men carry this silent war inside, but the battle ends when your training begins. If this message speaks to you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this strength today. Stay with me. What comes next may just change the way you respond to the world. One pause before you react, a sharp comment, a rolling eye, a tone laced with condescension. It only takes a moment, and something inside you tightens. The urge to speak back, to defend yourself, to match energy with energy, it rises fast. Most men know this feeling too well. That inner fire we mistake for control. But what if the strongest thing you could do was to say nothing? Staying calm isn't natural when you feel disrespected. Our culture often tells us that silence is weakness, that to be strong is to push back. But Stoic wisdom turns that idea upside down. Strength, according to the Stoics, isn't about reaction, it's about restraint. It's about having the power to respond and choosing instead to pause. Pause. A word that sounds so small yet holds the power to change everything. When you pause, you reclaim space between what happens and how you respond. You buy yourself time. You protect your peace. You create a gap wide enough for wisdom to walk in. Picture this. You're standing in the kitchen, late at night. Your teenage son mumbles something disrespectful under his breath. You hear it. Your pride flinches. The old version of you is ready to lash out, but something in you holds still. You breathe. You step away, not because you're afraid, but because you're learning to be free. And in that moment, something shifts. You didn't lose your power. You proved you owned it. We often think that reacting fast shows strength. But how many of those reactions end in regret? The slammed door, the harsh words, the look on your child's face after the anger leaves the room. You don't feel strong then. You feel ashamed. That's the trap. A quick reaction feeds your ego for a second, but stillness feeds your character for a lifetime. Epictetus wrote that it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. You weren't hurt because someone spoke sharply. You were hurt because you believed it meant you were small, disrespected, and less than. But the Stoic mind questions that belief. It doesn't follow every emotional impulse. It steps back, it observes, and then it chooses. This practice doesn't mean you suppress anger or tolerate abuse. Stoicism isn't about being passive, it's about being deliberate. When something or someone provokes you, you don't react out of habit, you act from clarity. And clarity only comes when you pause. In today's world, that pause is rare. We're trained to be quick, to text back fast, to clap back louder, to defend instantly. But fast reactions often come from old wounds. What you say in 5 seconds of anger might take 5 years to undo. A pause, even just 3 breaths, changes that story. It buys you options, and in those options you find your freedom. You're not trying to become emotionless, you're training to become emotionally disciplined. That's the difference. The pause isn't a delay, it's a decision. One that says, I am not controlled by your energy. I don't mirror chaos. I don't let this world push me around like a leaf in the wind. I am anchored. Try it today. When the tension rises, breathe before you speak. Step away if needed. Let the fire pass through without becoming it. You'll notice something remarkable. People lose interest in fighting someone who doesn't give them fuel. And even more importantly, you gain something that no one can give or take. Your calm. It starts with one pause, then another, and slowly you become the man who doesn't need to prove anything with volume. You prove it with presence. 2. Set clear boundaries. Some people don't need to shout to drain you. They simply walk into the room and shift the air. You feel your chest tighten, your energy drop, your thoughts spiral. Not because of what they say, but because of what you allow. The truth is, when you don't draw the line, others will cross it for you and act like it's their right to do so. Setting boundaries isn't about being cold or aggressive. It's about being honest with yourself and others about what keeps your peace intact. Stoicism doesn't ask you to endure endlessly. It asks you to protect your clarity, your time, and your emotional health. Epictetus said, "We don't control what others do, only how we choose to respond." But how you respond depends on whether you've decided what you will and will not accept. Imagine this. You're in the middle of work. Deadlines are tight, you're focused. Then a colleague walks in without knocking. Again, jokes, interruptions, stories. You feel your patience fray, but you say nothing. You nod, smile faintly, and endure. And after they leave, your frustration lingers, not because of what they did, but because of what you allowed. You didn't mark the edge, so they kept pushing. You think keeping quiet is being polite, that it keeps the peace. But that silence builds quiet resentment. And resentment left alone always turns into anger. The kind that simmers for weeks, that slips into your tone, that leaks into how you treat others. And when it finally erupts, it looks disproportionate because they never saw the damage being done. Stoicism teaches restraint, but it does not teach self-erasure. Saying no is not rude, it's wisdom. It's knowing where you end and others begin. It's understanding that your energy is not infinite, and not everyone deserves a piece of it. Especially not those who only take, who guilt, who manipulate through your silence. Some men grow up believing that boundaries are selfish, that real strength is tolerance at all costs. But quiet tolerance without limits isn't strength, it's surrender in disguise. And over time, it turns you into someone bitter, someone exhausted, someone who doesn't recognize himself when he looks in the mirror. A good man becomes a hollow one when he doesn't protect his edges. Now picture a small shift. The same colleague walks in again, lighthearted and loud. But this time, before they settle into your space, you say calmly, "I'm in the middle of something important. Let's talk later." No anger, no guilt, just a clear stance. And something remarkable happens. They step back. They may not love it, they may resist, but they understand. Because of clarity, spoken with calm, commands respect. This isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling access to you. You decide what enters your mental space. And if someone keeps crossing the same line, despite your clarity, that's no longer your burden to carry. That's their story, not yours. Boundaries don't need big speeches. They live in your tone, your body, your timing. They live in how you say, "Not now," in how you leave the room, in how you don't justify what doesn't need explaining. Over time, they become part of your presence. People will sense it without you needing to say a word. And if someone doesn't respect the boundaries you've drawn with care and calm, then perhaps it's not your boundary that's the problem. It's the fact that they never wanted one in the first place. So practice gently, speak firmly, and remember, the most peaceful men are not the ones who allow everything. They are the ones who choose wisely what to let in. Boundary by boundary, you're not pushing others away. You're simply building a space where you can breathe. 3. Not everything deserves your energy. A single comment can ruin your whole day if you let it. You're working hard, you're focused. Then someone makes a careless remark or a backhanded compliment, and suddenly your mind spins. It replays the words, it replays your silence. You feel anger, confusion, and the weight of something that should never have held that much power. But the problem wasn't what they said, it was the value you gave it. Not every fight is yours to fight. Not every opinion deserves space in your head. But most people spend their days reacting to everything: a rude driver, a passive-aggressive message, a sarcastic tone at the dinner table. We burn our energy trying to correct the world, forgetting that our peace was never meant to depend on others behaving right. That's the trap. Believing your calm must come after everything outside is fixed. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Calm comes first. You don't wait for life to respect you. You train yourself to respect your own stillness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoics didn't live in quiet mountains. They led armies, ran empires, raised children, and faced betrayal. And still they taught that most things are noise, echoes not worth chasing. What matters is what you choose to engage with. What you give energy to will grow. What you ignore will shrink. Your attention is the soil, and not every seed deserves to be watered. Imagine this moment. You're scrolling online. You see a post mocking someone's appearance or politics or beliefs. You're tempted to reply, to correct, to stand for what's right. But deep down you know the other person isn't listening. They're provoking. You close the app. You go outside. You breathe. That silence doesn't mean you lost. It means you stayed sovereign. The same happens in conversation. A family member brings up that same old criticism again. You feel it in your stomach, the rise of heat in your chest. But this time, you let the moment pass. You answer with a quiet nod or change the subject. It doesn't mean you agree. It means you've stopped feeding what drains you. The mistake many men make is believing every slight needs a response. That respect comes from pushing back every time. But true respect, especially self-respect, comes from choosing what's worthy of your fire. A man who reacts to everything ends up wasting himself on nothing. But a man who selects his battles wisely builds something. Your energy is a limited currency. And every day, countless distractions beg to spend it. From pointless arguments to invisible critics, from social drama to workplace games. The more you spend on what doesn't matter, the less you have for what does. Your purpose, your health, your loved ones. This isn't about being passive or weak, it's about clarity. Stoicism isn't indifference, it's precision. It's knowing that not everything that annoys you is a threat. Not everything that offends you deserves an answer. And not everyone who provokes you is worth your dignity. So the next time someone tries to pull you into chaos, pause. Ask yourself, will this matter next week? Will it shape the man I'm becoming? If the answer is no, walk away. Not with bitterness, but with grace. Not because you're afraid, but because you're already somewhere better. And when you walk away enough times, something shifts. The world stops owning your attention. Your emotions stop being borrowed by people who didn't earn them. And suddenly you realize you're not avoiding conflict. You're choosing peace. And peace, when chosen with strength, is the most powerful stance of all. 4. Why anger is dangerous. The moment anger takes over, something else leaves. Your judgment, your control, your ability to see clearly. You feel the rush, the heat, the urge to speak louder, move faster, strike back. And yet what starts as a defense quickly turns into destruction. Not always outside, but within. The silence that follows a fight often echoes longer than the noise that caused it. Anger feels powerful in the moment. It feels like strength, like you're standing up for yourself. But Stoicism teaches a hard truth. Anger is not strength. It's weakness dressed as a force. It is a loss of self-mastery. Seneca called it a form of madness, a temporary insanity that turns the wise into fools and makes the strong collapse from within. Because what anger does best is blur the line between what matters and what doesn't. And when you act from it, you burn everything, including the things you love. You may recall a moment at work. A colleague undermines you in front of others. You feel the blood rush to your face. You speak without thinking. You raise your voice. Maybe you win the moment, but you lose something larger: respect, clarity, trust. In the hours that follow, you replay it. Not because you're proud, but because something inside you knows it cost more than it gave. This is where most people go wrong. They believe anger needs to be released, that if they don't let it out, it festers. But the Stoic path doesn't bottle emotions, it transforms them. Anger isn't to be vented or buried, it is to be examined. Underneath it, always, is pain, expectation, fear, disappointment. And if you rush to speak or act, you miss the opportunity to understand what it's really trying to show you. Anger, like fire, spreads when it's fed. One misunderstanding, one insult, one broken promise, and suddenly, it consumes more than the cause that lit it. It harms your health. Studies now confirm what Stoics knew centuries ago. Anger raises blood pressure, damages the heart, and weakens the immune system. But beyond that, it corrupts your peace. And no argument is worth that cost. So the Stoic doesn't deny anger. He sees it, he holds it, and then he decides what to do with it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that most things that upset us are small in the grand scheme. That many of the people who frustrate us are acting from ignorance or their own pain. He chose to stay calm, not because he was passive, but because he was purposeful. To him, control wasn't about others obeying him, it was about mastering his own reactions. That's the power you can reclaim. Next time someone disrespects you, stop. Let the reaction rise and breathe through it. Don't speak right away, don't move. Let that wave crest and fall. The fire will shrink in the space you give it. And in that space, you'll see clearer. You might still respond, but it will be from strength, not impulse. You don't need to fight every slight. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. True presence speaks quietly. It is unshaken. It's not that nothing affects you, it's that nothing controls you. The more you practice this, the more others will notice. Not because you told them who you are, but because your silence says it louder. And over time, what used to ignite you won't even move you. What used to burn you will pass like wind. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And in that stillness, you'll find something deeper than any victory in an argument. You'll find yourself, undisturbed, whole, and free. 5. Frustration comes from unrealistic expectations. You thought they would understand. You believed they would show up, speak fairly, and act with care. But they didn't. And that quiet ache in your chest, the one that quickly turns into frustration, isn't because of what they did. It's because you expected something different. Frustration doesn't grow from chaos. It grows from the space between what we wanted to happen and what actually happened. That space is often filled with stories we created, standards we assumed others shared, and hopes we never spoke aloud. We get angry not only when people fail us, but when they fail the version of them we built in our minds. Stoicism teaches that suffering begins when we demand the world to behave by our internal rules. But the world never agreed to follow them. And people, no matter how close they are, often won't know the script you're expecting them to read from. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather wish that what happens happens the way it does. Then you will be happy." This isn't passive acceptance. It's mental strength, the kind that stops needing others to play a role in your peace. You're sitting across from your brother at a family gathering. You worked hard to keep the peace all year. Then he makes the same sarcastic joke about you he always does. Everyone laughs. You force a smile, but deep down, a fire rises. You thought this time would be different, that he would respect your silence, that he would finally change. He didn't. And your frustration isn't just about his words, it's about the story you told yourself before walking in. This is how it happens, again and again. We imagine fairness, we project kindness, we create expectations built from our values. But others are not us. And if we tie our peace to their behavior, we hand them the keys to our emotional house. It's easy to think letting go of expectations means lowering your standards, that you're giving people permission to act poorly. But Stoicism doesn't ask you to tolerate everything. It asks you to be clear about what you control. You can expect excellence from yourself. You can choose your own code, but you can't demand the world obey it. That's not wisdom. That's exhaustion. So what do? You shift. You still show up, but you bring fewer assumptions and more awareness. You recognize patterns. You stop being surprised when old behaviors repeat. And instead of reacting, you respond with calm. Not because you don't care, but because you've outgrown the need to be shocked every time. Frustration fades when expectations meet reality. Not because you become numb, but because you become precise. You say to yourself, "This is how they are. I can't fix that. But I can choose how I enter, how I engage, and when I exit." Suddenly you reclaim the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you build freedom. This shift isn't about giving up on others. It's about giving up on illusions. You stop waiting for someone to apologize in the way you scripted. You stop hoping for someone to say what you always wanted to hear. You stop expecting that people will behave according to rules they never agreed to live by. And when you do, your frustration begins to dissolve. You begin to meet life on its terms, not yours. And in that meeting, you discover something better than control: inner stability. You become the calm one in rooms full of reaction. Not because nothing matters, but because you've learned what matters most is how you respond when expectations fall apart. 6. Forgiveness frees you from the past. The moment you hold on to resentment, you begin to carry a weight that only grows heavier with time. Not all wounds bleed. Some settle deep into your thoughts, your breath, your voice. You think about what they said, how they said it, what they didn't say. The hurt circles back at night, not because it's happening again, but because you haven't truly let it go. Forgiveness is not about excusing someone. It's not about pretending it didn't happen. It's about choosing your own freedom over your pain. That choice doesn't erase the past, but it reclaims your present. Many people believe that holding on to anger protects them, that it's a form of justice. But in truth, it's a quiet prison. You become emotionally tied to the very person or moment you wish to forget. And the cost is higher than most are willing to admit. Stoicism looks at forgiveness not as an emotional indulgence, but as a logical act of self-preservation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, the best way to rise above what hurt you is not to become a reflection of it. You don't get even, you get free. Imagine this. Someone close betrayed you years ago. You've built a life since then, but their name still triggers something inside. You tell yourself it's because they never said sorry. But the truth is, you've been waiting for them to fix something they may never even see as broken. And every time the memory surfaces, you relive what they did. Not because it still matters, but because your mind has never been taught how to release. The Stoics teach that you don't forgive because someone deserves it. You forgive because you deserve peace. You deserve to stop replaying the same scene. You deserve mornings without bitterness and nights without imaginary arguments. You deserve to walk into new relationships without dragging the shadow of an old one behind you. Forgiveness doesn't mean you need to call them, or write a letter, or pretend you're okay with what happened. Forgiveness means you stop handing them space in your mind. You stop letting their mistake narrate your inner world. You can draw the boundary, you can walk away, you can still feel the pain, but you also say quietly, inwardly, "This no longer owns me," and that ownership returns your power. Slowly, you begin to loosen the grip. The story softens, the emotion fades, and what remains is not forgetting, but perspective. You begin to see them not as monsters, but as broken people acting from their own pain. That doesn't make what they did right, but it keeps you from letting it define who you are. Epictetus reminded us, it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. When you shift your perception, you shift your emotion, you gain space, and in that space healing begins, not by force, but by understanding. Try this. The next time that memory returns, meet it with stillness. Don't fight it. Let it rise. Acknowledge it. Then breathe. Say to yourself, "I choose not to carry this today." Repeat it if you need to. Do it until your nervous system begins to listen. Forgiveness isn't a one-time act. It's a daily decision to lighten your load. You don't have to forget what happened, but you can choose to no longer relive it. And in that choice, you don't just find peace. You find the quiet strength of a man who walks forward without dragging the weight of yesterday behind him. 7. Retrain your brain with practice. The way you react today is not your destiny. It's a pattern, and patterns can be rewritten. Someone interrupts you again. A passive-aggressive comment lands in your inbox. A family member brings up the one topic they know presses your buttons. You tense up. You feel it in your jaw, your chest, your breath. Before your mind can even process the moment, your body has already chosen the old road. Anger, frustration, withdrawal. It's fast. It's automatic. And that's where most people stop. They assume this is who they are. But what if it's just what they've rehearsed? Stoicism, long before neuroscience gave it a name, understood this truth. Your mind becomes what you train it to be. You can condition it to react in fear, in anger, in defensiveness, or you can rewire it to move with clarity, calm, and strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." If that's true, then every reaction is a reflection of your mental habits, not your fate. The science calls it neuroplasticity. Your brain adapts. It reshapes. Each time you pause instead of yell, breathe instead of snap, walk away instead of confront, you carve a new path. And the more often you walk that path, the clearer it becomes. The response that once felt impossible starts becoming instinct. Picture this. You come home after a long day, tired, hungry. The house is loud, dishes are piled, Your partner forgot something important. That familiar heat rises. Your old pattern leans in. Raise your voice, make your disappointment obvious, retreat to silence as punishment. But this time something interrupts that loop. You stand still. You close your eyes, 1 breath in, 4 seconds out. You open your mouth, not to complain, but to ask gently, what happened today? And everything changes, not just for them, but for you. Because you just gave your brain a new model. And it will remember. Next time, the pause will come faster. The breath will be deeper. The reaction will feel less automatic. You're not just reacting anymore. You're directing. The mistake many men make is believing that growth is some distant, dramatic breakthrough. But growth is often quiet, unseen. It happens in moments when no one is watching. It happens when you choose differently, again and again, until that choice becomes your new default. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastery doesn't come by chance, it comes by practice. The kind that shows up in real life, during arguments, traffic, deadlines, disrespect. You don't wait for peace to find you. You train for it like a warrior trains for war. So the next time you feel triggered, don't try to suppress it. Let the feeling rise, but meet it with awareness. Watch it, name it, then act slowly. This is not weakness. This is rewiring. This is reclaiming the gap between stimulus and response, the space where your strength lives. With time, your reactions soften, your presence deepens. You no longer echo the chaos around you. You become the still point in the storm. And one day, without even noticing, you'll face a situation that would have shaken the old you. But you stay centered, grounded, calm, not because you're pretending, but because you've become someone new. It's not magic, it's repetition. And it begins the moment you stop saying, "This is just how I am," and start saying, "This is how I choose to be." That's how real change begins. Not in noise, but in quiet decisions repeated with care. Day by day, thought by thought, breath by breath. 8. Gratitude and love diminish anger. Anger thrives in scarcity. When your mind only sees what's wrong, who failed you, what's missing, it begins to tighten. You become smaller inside, more reactive, more brittle. But the moment you shift your focus, even slightly, something opens. You begin to see not just what's broken, but what's still holding. Not just who disappointed you, but who stood by you. That space is where gratitude begins. And when it enters, anger loses its grip. Gratitude is not denial. It doesn't pretend everything is perfect. It simply redirects your attention toward what still brings meaning, toward what grounds you, toward what keeps you whole. Stoicism doesn't ask you to fake positivity. It asks you to direct your energy with wisdom. Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." That isn't comfort, it's strength. You're in traffic, you're running late, a driver cuts you off. The instinct to react comes fast. Maybe you hit the horn, maybe you mumble something under your breath. But what if, in that very moment, you took a breath and remembered you're healthy, employed, on your way to something meaningful, and not injured in a wreck? That shift doesn't erase the inconvenience, but it returns you to reality, to perspective. It reminds you that your peace is more valuable than your right to be irritated. Gratitude makes room for a different presence. The one who notices the kindness of a stranger, the quiet resilience in your own journey, the cup of coffee in your hand, the fact that, despite everything, you're still standing. When anger wants to shrink you down to what went wrong, gratitude expands you to what's still right. And in that expansion, there's less space for outrage. The same is true with love. Not the romantic kind, but the active kind. The kind that seeks understanding before judgment. When someone disappoints you, the impulse is to assume the worst. But love invites a pause. It asks, are they hurting? Did they mean it? Are they even aware? This doesn't mean you excuse them. It means you don't allow your judgment to harden before your empathy has had a chance to breathe. Imagine a heated argument with someone close. Words fly, tones escalate. You want to win, to prove you were right. But somewhere in that storm, you remember the years behind the voice in front of you, the shared history, the times they showed up when no one else did. And suddenly, you lower your voice. Not because they deserve it, but because love reminds you who you are when you're not trying to be right. The modern world often celebrates outrage, but Stoicism values restraint. It doesn't mean indifference. it means choosing your response from a place of inner clarity. And love is a form of that clarity. It reminds you of what matters more than ego. When anger rises, ask yourself, what am I forgetting to be grateful for right now? Who am I forgetting to see with softness? This is not a weakness. This is practice. The kind that trains your nervous system to settle, your mind to expand, your heart to lead without losing reason. Try ending each day by listing 3 things, small or large, you're thankful for. Do it when it feels easy. Do it more when it doesn't. This habit isn't a spiritual trick, it's a Stoic reorientation of the soul. Over time, you'll find yourself slower to explode, quicker to breathe, and far more rooted. Not because the world became kinder, but because you did. 9. Separate facts from interpretations. Not every hurt is caused by what happens. Many are born from what we believe it means. Someone doesn't reply to your message. Your mind races, they're ignoring you, they don't care, they're angry. Hours pass, you hold on to the tension, the silence, the imagined offense. But what if their phone died? What if they were overwhelmed? What if their silence had nothing to do with you? The event was simple, an unread message. The storm came from the story you wrote on top of it. The mind is a storyteller. It doesn't wait for proof. It fills gaps with assumptions, judgments, and fears. And the more you believe those internal narratives, the more power they have over you. This is where so much anger begins, not in action, but in interpretation. And if you don't learn to separate the two, you'll spend your life at war with shadows. Stoicism reminds us, facts are neutral. Interpretations are not. Epictetus taught, it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Between the world and your reaction lies a moment of choice. In that space, you can question the story you're building, or you can let it build you. You're at a meeting, a colleague interrupts you twice. You feel dismissed, disrespected, your heart rate rises. But instead of reacting, you ask yourself, what actually happened? They spoke when I was speaking. That's it. Everything else, the disrespect, the intention, is something I added. And when you see that, something softens. You may still speak up, but now it's from clarity, not assumption. This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. It means you become aware of how much of your suffering comes from the meaning you layered onto what happened. You learn to pause before reacting, to verify before assuming, and most importantly, you learn to question your internal narrator. We often walk through life with outdated beliefs whispering in our ears. I'm not good enough. People always abandon me. No one respects me. These become lenses through which every neutral moment turns into proof of a painful belief. And the tragedy is that we rarely question the lens. We question ourselves instead. We believe the emotion without asking if it's built on truth. The Stoic path invites you to look closer, to untangle emotion from evidence, to sit quietly for a moment and ask, what did I see? What did I hear? What did I add? This practice isn't easy, but it is freeing. Because once you realize that much of your pain is manufactured, you also realize you have the power to stop producing it. Imagine walking into a room and no one looks up. You could tell yourself they don't care, that you're invisible, that you're not welcome. Or you could tell yourself they're busy, focused, distracted. Neither story is confirmed, but only one protects your calm. This doesn't make you naive, it makes you disciplined. You learn to hold back judgment. You learn to ask rather than assume. You learn to stay rooted in reality, not wrapped in projections. And in doing so, you reduce unnecessary conflict, not just with others, but within yourself. Try this today. The next time you feel triggered, stop and break the moment into 2 parts. What actually happened, and what did you tell yourself it meant? Then ask if that story is true or just familiar. If it's not serving you, let it go. This is how peace is built, not in perfect conditions, but in practiced perception. When you learn to separate fact from interpretation, you don't become numb, you become clear. And in that clarity, you gain something most never do, a mind that doesn't turn every moment into a battle. A heart that doesn't fight every feeling. A life that flows because you stopped resisting things that never needed resistance in the first place. Staying calm around unbearable people is not a talent. It's a practice, a discipline. And like every meaningful habit, it's built through daily intention, not perfection. Today, you've walked through 9 powerful shifts rooted in Stoic wisdom. You've seen how a pause can protect your dignity, how boundaries are not walls, but doors that preserve your peace, how not every word deserves your reaction, and not every opinion deserves your energy. You've also learned how anger is a fire that burns inward, how expectations can quietly destroy relationships, and how forgiveness frees you, not them. We explored the power of retraining your brain, of turning your focus to gratitude, of letting go of the unnecessary. And perhaps most importantly, we uncovered the truth that what hurts you often isn't what happened, but the story you told yourself about it. These are not one-time insights, they're daily decisions. They're reminders that inner strength is not loud, but consistent. Calm is not the absence of pressure, it's your presence inside it. And in a world that constantly pulls at your emotions, the ability to respond with clarity, presence, and purpose is a rare and powerful form of quiet mastery. So start small. Practice one principle today, then another tomorrow. Watch yourself change, slowly, steadily, from within. And as you do, share your journey. Let others know what you've faced and how you've grown. Someone out there is fighting the same storm in silence. Your words might be the light they need. Leave your story in the comments. And if this video helped you, share it with someone who's ready to stop reacting and start living with calm, strength, and self-respect.